I'm going to tell you all about my process for deciding to build a straw bale house in Joshua Tree, all my reasons behind it, how I did my research, if I'm happy with it, and then ultimately why I wouldn't do it again. So the story starts in 2020 when there was a lockdown in the entire country, and I live in Los Angeles. And my friend Jess, one day she was like, hey, do you want to go to Joshua Tree with me to look at some land? And I was like, I love the desert, so yes, please get me out of the house. I would love to go look at land with you. So she had a friend out there who had already bought land for very cheap. He already had a shipping container out there that he was living in, and he was starting the process to permit a house that he was going to build himself. We went out there, we took a look at some land that she was looking at, which was 5 acres, and part of that was a hill, and it was only $9,000. And we looked at her friend's land, and that one was, I think, 2.5 acres, and he had bought it for $5,000 a few months before that. I have always loved the desert, and I had always dreamed of owning land in California or having a house in California, and I just figured because of the way house prices had been going the past 20 years that was not ever going to be a possibility for me because I don't make a lot of money. On a good year, I make about $55,000 a year. I'm always trying to make more, but that just hasn't happened yet. But when I went out there and I looked at the land and I looked at the cost of the land, I thought to myself, I think I can afford this. So after a little bit of research, I decided that I would try to find the perfect piece of land for myself. And I did do that, and my friend Jess helped me. She was actually the one that found it first, and she sent it to me. It was a listing on Zillow. It looked pretty perfect, and I think a week later, me and my fiance at the time, we went out to see it, and it was the second piece of land that we went to, and it was 113 degrees out there. We saw it, we fell in love with it. There's 2 paved roads, there's water and power nearby. It was perfect. There was a beautiful view. That day, I called the owners and I was like, hey, I want to put in the deposit. I want to sign the paperwork. I want this land. And it was a little under $10,000 for about 4 acres. I got really, really lucky with that one because right after that, prices went way up because, well, there was a bubble. This is my cat Noodle. So once I bought the land, I started researching what was the cheapest and easiest thing that I could build out there. I wanted to have some kind of structure so that I could have an Airbnb because at the time there was a huge boom of tourism in the Joshua Tree area. It was one of the few places that you could go in the lockdowns. People wanted to be outside. They wanted to get away from the city. So that's what caused the prices to go up in Joshua Tree. So I started doing all this research on earth building because I thought it was really interesting. I first heard of cob houses, and then I heard of Adobe, and then I heard of Superadobe, and then I read about Calearth. Went on the Calearth website, and I did all this research about Superadobe domes, and I think these are so cool. I think they're so fun. And I really wanted to build one of these domes. There is actually a Superadobe dome structure in Joshua Tree. It's Bonita Domes. This is the one. It was built in 2009. So I wanted to build these domes, but I couldn't find the plans on the website. Before you can submit for a permit, you need architectural plans. And in theory, it seemed like since someone else had gotten this permitted in Joshua Tree, that I could also get this permitted in Joshua Tree. I went to Calearth, I took the tour, and after a lot of questioning, I found out that actually in 2019, they decided they would not accept these domes anymore. Now, I called the building department and I asked about it, and they said I would just have to get it engineered, and if a California engineer stamped the plans and it was all up to engineering standards, that was fine, that I could build it. Spoiler alert, that wasn't true. In theory, that could happen, but according to the building department, it's up to their discretion whether they will accept an engineered plan or not. So I could go to all the trouble of getting these plans, getting them engineered, and then submitting them to the building department only to have them say, no, not because this isn't a safe structure, not because it doesn't conform to the rules of California, but just because we don't want to accept it. Come to find out years later, it's because their plan checkers are not engineers. So they can't check an engineered plan. When I was at Calearth, I talked to them and they basically said that they no longer sell the plans because you can't get them permitted in San Bernardino County, and they wouldn't want someone to buy the plans and then find out they can't get permitted, which I totally understand. And the thing is, if you really look into Calearth domes, most of them are being built outside of the US because the building departments in the US aren't really very favorable to these domes. The great thing about them is that they are fire resistant, they're earthquake resistant, and you can build them with your hands. You don't need any heavy machinery to do it, not even for the foundation. I know that right now, as of this moment in 2025, they are working on getting these domes included in the California building code. So hopefully that will happen one day. And when it does, I will build one of these domes in California. I promise. So domes were not an option. So I started to look into other natural building methods, and I found straw bale. And straw bale seemed like a really good solution because the thing is, it's very hot in Joshua Tree. It gets to sometimes 120 Fahrenheit in the summer, And then it also is very cold. So sometimes at night it gets down to 40 degrees. It'll snow in Joshua Tree. So you have this huge range from very cold to very hot. And straw bale is great insulation. It's actually probably better for this environment than the domes because the domes are just thermal mass. They actually have no insulation, which is a slightly different mechanism for heating and cooling and retaining temperature than insulation. So I think the straw bale is a great option. Straw bales don't do as well in very moist environments, and there is so little rainfall in Joshua Tree. If you go out there and you look at the houses, they are really sun damaged. Like the sun is so hot there and it just destroys everything. I think that the house that I'm building is just going to last a really long time. Straw bale lasts a really long time. There's a lot of benefits to it. They are more fireproof than a regular house. Several reasons for that. The straw bale is encased in layers and layers of plaster. Straw bale is also packed so tightly, it doesn't really have the air to allow a fire to propagate. And the thing is, it's not that it's completely fireproof. It just takes longer to burn than a regular house, which makes it more fireproof than a regular house. You can Google it if you don't believe me. They're pest and rodent resistant. What they're made of is like an inorganic material. It's like mostly cellulose, so there's not a lot of nutritional content. So like creatures can't really eat it and get any calories out of it, so they usually don't. It's earthquake resistant, so great for California, Southern California, which is earthquake county. And one of the best things I liked about straw bale specifically is its ecological benefits. Our modern insulation and modern building materials, they're made from petroleum products. They do off-gas. Straw bale doesn't do that. It's a completely natural material. And a lot of the time, straw is an agricultural waste product. So if it's not being used for something, it'll usually just be burned. So by taking the straw and using it for something, you're keeping carbon from ending up in the atmosphere. And it poses no threat to the people building the house either. The walls, I believe, are somewhere around R40, and the minimum requirements in California for wall insulation is about half that. So I started looking for straw bale plans to submit to the building department. I found some on strawbale.com, but I found a set of plans. They are by a really great architect named Tucson Sarion. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'll put a link to his office in the description. Highly recommend him. So I bought the plans for $800 and then I got an engineer. The plans, my engineer was fantastic. Her name is Lucy Hunter. Also put her info in the description. She is certified in the state of California as an engineer. She stamped the plans. She did all the calculations. I got all the paperwork together. I submitted it to the building department, and that is where my issues began. Now, here's the thing. In San Bernardino County, if you are using just like a traditional stick-built building method, you don't need to have your plans stamped by an engineer. But because this is a different method, I needed to get an engineer, so that was an additional cost. Straw bale is in the California Building Code. There's basically like a list of instructions on how you would do it, and this is the thing that's accepted by California. When you're designing a house, you could have what's called an engineered design, which is basically, even if it doesn't necessarily completely conform to everything that's in the straw bale code, an engineer does the calculations, stamps it, and says basically, in my professional opinion, based on math and science and things we know to be true about how building materials work, this meets all the requirements in the state of California in order to be habitable. It meets all the load conditions, the earthquake conditions, wind, fire, everything. But the building department would not accept that. They said that we have to go with a prescriptive design, which means that we have to follow exactly what it says in the Straw Bale Building Code to the letter. The Straw Bale Building Code is a little bit out of date. There has been more research, there have been improvements since it was introduced, and it hasn't been changed because these things take time. Local and state governments take time to update their information, and the private sector just goes faster. Now, you'll remember that I said previously that I had called the building department. They told me that if I have a non-traditional design, if it is stamped by an engineer and it meets all the engineering requirements, that they would accept it. And that was not true. They did not accept this. And they told me that it was within their discretion not to accept an engineered design. I asked them why. They did not say. But come to find out later, it's because the plan checkers are not engineers, so they can't check an engineered design because they don't have enough knowledge. We changed the plans in order to conform with the prescriptive design. I had to get rid of a lot of windows. I was okay with most of it because out there's a lot of sun, a lot of light. If I want to see it, if I want to be in it, I can just go outside. And I actually like the idea of my house being kind of like a dark cave that I could use to escape from the sun. My only issue, the thing I really didn't like, was that we had to get rid of the windows in the bathrooms. I don't like that. I would like to have a window in the bathroom. This is just how it is now. I've made peace with it. Anyway, we made all those changes. It took 3 rounds of revisions. And then finally, we got stuck on the fact that one of the load-bearing walls on the inside of the house was a regular stick frame wall, and the outside walls were straw bale. Now, it wouldn't make sense to have straw bale walls on the inside of the house because you're just taking up extra space. The thing they're really doing, insulating, is they need to do that on the outside, right? The plan checker said you can't mix these two designs. Now, I guess the other walls on the interior of the house were fine because they weren't load bearing. I don't know. I think my engineer got offended. She engineers bridges for the state of California. She's engineered tons of straw bale houses in Mammoth Lake, which has the most stringent requirements for snow loads, for earthquake, for everything. And they have engineers that they contract to check the plans in Mammoth Lake. So we went to the plan checker's manager to dispute this. The manager upheld the plan checker's decision. We then went all the way to the building official of San Bernardino County. This is an elected official who is an engineer, who is basically everyone's boss in the building department for the entire county of San Bernardino. Finally, when we sent him a bunch of emails, he actually reviewed them and said it was fine. So if that was the end of it, then I might be telling you like, yeah, you know, it was hard to get it permitted, but now I know what they want and I would do it again if I were building another house. But that wasn't the end of it. Initially, my plan was to build the house myself, like with my hands, because I just think I can do anything if I watch enough YouTube videos. But the problem is, one of the first things you have to do is put in a foundation, and I admit that I really can't do that. So I looked into getting a construction loan for the straw bale house. Now, a lot of the time, construction loan lenders won't give you a loan on a straw bale house. Anything that's not a stick frame house, they won't give you a loan for that. Now, there are some people who will tell you, well, it's not a straw bale house. It's just a modified post and beam with cellulose infill, which in theory is, you know, allowed. But I didn't say anything about straw bale. When I applied for this construction loan, I sent them my plans. They didn't say anything. And we started the process. I gave them all my financial information. And then it was time to find a contractor. And I did find a contractor through Craigslist who was still like starting out in his contracting business, but had experience working for a lot of other contractors, who was willing to take on this project. But the bank would not approve him because they didn't have enough experience. So I started looking for other contractors. And let me tell you, I think just in general, it's hard to find contractors for regular houses. It was even harder to find contractors for a straw bale house. It also amazes me sometimes how people conduct business, where like I send them an email with all the information. They send me an email back asking me the same questions that are in the email. For example, you know, when I was sending out these inquiries to a list of contractors that the bank provided, the first thing I said was, I already have the building permit. Everybody asked me if I had submitted for a building permit yet. How I finally found my contractor, he was the only one who replied and asked me the right questions. He was on the list of contractors provided by the bank, so I was like, okay, they've worked with him before. I can trust this person. It showed me that he read my email. And he told me that the only reason that he was taking this job was because I already had the building permit, because that is the thing that takes the longest time on a build. If you already have the building permit, you can pretty much just start right away, and then actually building the house does not take that long. He had built a straw bale house before, so I was really happy about that. We agreed on a good price. It was about $325,000 for the build. That didn't include the permitting, that didn't include the cost of the land. So just keep that in mind. At this point, it is 2025. The bank finally realizes that it's a straw bale house and is like, hey, we're not gonna be able to give you a construction loan for that. I talked to my contractor and he's like, hey, I can finance the build and then you just buy the house from me as a traditional mortgage. I called the bank back and said, hey, can we do this? Is it gonna be a problem that it's straw bale if it's a traditional mortgage? They said, no, that's totally fine. That is what we are doing. And if that had been all of it, I might have been like, yeah, I'd build a straw bale house again. I'd hire this same contractor because he's awesome. But no, they started building. They had a really hard time finding the straw bale, the correct kind of straw bale, one that wasn't moldy, all of that. And then once they started putting it in the walls, the inspector comes and he shows them a diagram. And it's from a previous plan submittal of like what the wall's supposed to be, and it's much more involved than what they were about to do. And he says, you have to follow this. And they did not tell me until they were almost done with this other method, which was much more labor intensive, which costs more money. They're not charging me extra, which is great, but it's not great for them. And it's not great for the timeline of the house. If I had known, I would have pushed back. I would have gotten it in writing. I would have done what I did with the permit. And they told me, it's like, hey, you know, we always, whatever it is the inspector wants, that's what goes. And I get it. I understand why they feel that way. But they don't understand that the building department hates me and my project and just doesn't want it to happen. So they're making it as difficult as possible. And if you are drawing another conclusion from the story that I have told you right now, please let me know in the comments. I don't know what else to think, because none of this makes any sense. Because literally he was drawing from a diagram from a set of plans that had been rejected. And now he was making us do that. By the time I found out about it, it was too late to fight this because most of the work had already been done. All of that, all of those things are the reason that I would not build a straw bale house again. The building department just made it too difficult. And you might think, hey, this is Southern California. They want to be eco-friendly. They want solar panels. But when it comes to actually building a house that's eco-friendly, they make it really difficult. And part of the reason is because they don't know anything about straw bale. And so they don't know how to check it, and they don't know how to inspect it, and they don't know how to permit it. But here's the thing, it's in the California Building Code, so really they should make more of an effort to do that when this is presented. It's taken a lot of us educating them about it. That portion's done, the walls are getting finished up, the rest of the house will be finished. I will be very, very happy with my straw bale house. I'm so excited. I've never lived in a house before. I'm so excited to have a house, an affordable house, a house in the desert with a beautiful view, a bunch of land. But if I was gonna build another house in this area, I would go with a regular stick frame house because it just wasn't worth all the time and extra cost and the arguing and all of that. And truly, I think that's San Bernardino's loss because these houses are just objectively better for that environment. And you know, I hope that just in the future, more people build these houses and the county gets more familiar with that process and makes it more streamlined and makes it easier on people. And maybe at that point, I'll build another straw bale house. But I know my contractor's not gonna build another straw house. I know he's done with that. We actually have a piece of land across the street from our land because our neighbor was selling it and he gave us a really good price. And what I wanna build there is an A-frame house. Maybe for one of those kit homes, because then I actually can do it myself and I'll have a house next door to live in. That's what I would do for my next house. Hopefully this was informative to you so that you can decide if you want to build a straw bale house wherever you are. Hubbell and Hubbell Architects actually got the first straw bale house permitted in LA County in 2021. I think especially after the fires, it would be a great material to build from. You know, this is California and Southern California. I think we should be more accepting of non-traditional building methods, especially eco-building methods, because it's better for the environment. And here's my conspiracy theory for you, just to round out the video. I think the main reason they don't allow the domes is because the construction companies out there can't make any money off of it. And I think a lot of people that are involved in the city government are also involved in construction companies and make money from those things. So I don't know, I don't have any proof, but there you go. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. If you like videos about eco building, about straw bale houses, about building in the desert, about DIY decorating, or just DIY projects in general, subscribe to this channel, like the video, and tell me about your project in the comments. Thanks.